What a weird fucking way for that game to end last night, dude.
Dude, I was there last night, and it's the whole game sucked. Like I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. Like it was bad. They had 10 shots through 45 minutes of play. Sheelaz was the only one who looked like he was there. The rest didn't help, but they're not the reason they lost. That goal was bull, I will say. Yeah, it was rather unpleasant.
Yeah. Like, I caught the end of the game right when the last goal was happening, and it was just like, oh, okay, we're gonna count it as a good goal. Okay, whatever. Actually, no, it's a penalty on Carlson. Okay, whatever. Oh no, we're actually gonna call it a good goal. What? Like, what the fuck?
It makes no sense. That whole sequence was just like, oh, let's try this. Oh, they're still booing? Let's try this. Oh, they're going to boo even harder? Well, let's just get this done over with.
Yeah. It was just one of those, like, games that you write off. But hopefully, like, tonight they can swing back hard against the Islanders. We'll see how that goes, though, so.
Yeah. The Islanders who now play in Long Island instead of Brooklyn, borough of New York, where they have skyscrapers and everything.
Yeah, man. Oh, hey! And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is one of us goes to Ukraine and the other goes to Uganda, but we travel to each location by taking the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I'm the one who, despite all logic, is quietly hoping for Kyle Dubas to trade for Artemi Panarin so Sidney Crosby can go on one last Stanley Cup push. Ryan James Kearns.
And I'm the one, the only, I don't completely hate that idea, but I'm a little unsure about it, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's right there in the title. Every week, me and Ryan listen to a music album, then we convene to talk about it, track by track, note by note, line by line, pick out what we like, what we don't like, which tracks we thought were good, which tracks we thought were stellar, which tracks we thought were crap, and go over it in detail. And then at the end of every episode, we give the album a rating out of 10, and we recommend another album based on the album we just talked about. And then the cycle begins anew like it did at Pride Rock. So, Ryan, last week, what did we talk about to close out the month of January?
So, we discussed Bad Bunny's album, Verano Senti. And, at the time, the reason why we covered that album is, well, he's doing the Super Bowl halftime show, so it would be very, timely, important, and I don't want to say critical, but it would be pretty much a task that you and I would have to, should take upon ourselves if we're going to be people who can speak of hey, I know music, I've experienced music, I have opinions about music. Well, turns out, little did we know, Mr. Bad Bunny is not only Mr. Super Bowl halftime, he is Mr. Grammy winner extraordinaire. So, shout out to Bad Bunny. Huge night for the Grammys, and kind of curious to see how this halftime show is going to go. Probably going to be the only reason why I'm going to end up watching the Super Bowl. I mean, I might be able to catch it on YouTube afterward, the halftime show afterwards, but I digress. Anyways, yeah. Overall, with Bad Bunny, Verano Senti, I'm very happy that we did the review. Even though, I kind of had an overall, mixed bag of emotions walking away from the review, but very happy that we did it nonetheless.
I'm happy we did it too because, again, it was a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, there were elements of it we were familiar with, whether it was the musical elements or the vocal elements of braggadocio that Bad Bunny has mastered. By the way, after the Grammys were announced and that he won Album of the Year, I was like, all right, fine, I'll play along. And I actually took a listen to DMTF, which was his album that won Album of the Year. And I won't spoil what we talked about last week on the show, but I will say I did like this one better. I did like the new album better than Un Verano Santi. For reasons we may explore in the future. Who knows? But yeah, I am very glad that we did the Bad Bunny episode on Un Verano Santi. And as Ryan mentioned, if you want to take a listen to that, find us on our different platforms. We'll explain which platforms those are later if you do not know.
That being said, Matthew, we've covered Bad Bunny, one of our longest albums in terms of track length that we've ever covered. And we did a very good job covering it, and we did a recap. But you and I must strive to hit a higher ground, and by hitting a higher ground, we must pivot onto our next review. And Matthew, based on the logic of our order, it is your turn to present an album for us to review. Why don't you tell the listeners what you got cooked up for us this week, man?
So this week, talking about albums that have won Album of the Year and artists who have won Album of the Year, we're going to be talking about a man who pretty much had a dynasty of his own in the 1970s, where he won Album of the Year 3 times in 4 years. And the first of those albums is the one we're going to talk about today as part of our now recurring look into Black History Month and artists with African American backgrounds. And that artist is Stevie Wonder. And the album we're going to be talking about today is his 1973 album, Innervisions. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Stevie Wonder is, I mean, to be fair, it is 2026. So the impact that Stevie Wonder has had has somewhat diminished over the years, but I think it's time to bring it back a little bit because this man is a man to be respected. Now, Stevie Wonder was born in 1950, May 13th. I don't know what sign that is. And depending on who you ask, he was born with the last name Judkins or Morris. It's a very complicated story, and it seems to be one that has taken years to really just dive into. But the main thing about Stevie Wonder, or one of the main things, is that as he was pretty much born blind and had damage to his retinas, so he really couldn't see. But that didn't stop him from trying to find a voice, and that voice was through music. And so he started playing piano and started playing harmonica at a very young age, along with other instruments. And throughout, playing in his church and playing with his family and getting gigs around the neighborhood, like we've talked about with many other different bands throughout the Hey Listen to This archives, little by little, he made his way to the big time. And in 1962, he released his first album called The Jazz Soul of Little Stevie. Because at the time, he was Little Stevie Wonder. And this album was released when he was 12. So we're also dealing with a child prodigy of sorts here. He was eventually signed to Motown Records, where he became one of the younger people ever to hit number 1 on the Billboard charts with the song Fingertips Part 2, which, by the way, fun fact, not only is one of the rare live songs to go number 1 because it was recorded live, the personnel on this, Stevie Wonder on vocals and harmonica, bass by James Jamerson, who we talked about in the Diana Ross episode, and drums by Marvin Gaye. So Marvin Gaye was Stevie Wonder's drummer when they went to number one together, if you want a little bit of history. So Stevie Wonder, he's 12 years old, reaching puberty, and now he has a number one hit. But a few years go by, he doesn't really have a whole lot of success, and Motown actually considers dropping him at one point, but he did get a hit single in 1966 called Uptight, parentheses, Everything's Alright, and after that, he became more of a mainstay on the Motown charts. He had songs such as I Was Made to Love Her, For Once in My Life, My Cherie Amour. Not songs that would go on to define him, but songs that would be up among the ranks of good Motown singles of the late 60s. But by 1970, Motown, as we've discussed before, started to be shifting a little bit because the artists were starting to shift more into psychedelia, and the traditional assembly line that Berry Gordy had established was crumbling, transforming, getting stale, whatever you want to call it. And after Wonder got married in 1970 at the age of 20, he started getting a little bit more self-involved with his work. And by self-involved, I mean he started playing every instrument on his album and started writing most of the music. So it wasn't just piano and harmonic anymore. We're talking bass, guitar, drums, synthesizer, and so much more. He decided to get a little bit more independent. This is around the same time that Marvin Gaye was parading in that same sort of self-controlled direction that would signal the end of the traditional Motown heyday. Then in 1972, he releases a couple albums, Music of My Mind and Talking Book, both of which further solidify Stevie's independence as an artist of his own, and some really good stuff on either of those albums, whether you talk about Superwoman or particularly on Talking Book, stuff like You Are the Sunshine of My Life and Superstition were both off that album. And right away, you start to see, oh, this guy's for real. But even then, he was still very much leaning towards pop and light soul. And that brings us to this album, Innervisions, released in 1973. And this album started to get a little darker, as we'll get into. But yeah, this became the first of a run of 3 albums in a row where Stevie just became one of the most dominant figures, not just popular status, but critical status among music legends. So that's a brief overview of what we're getting into with Innervisions here today. Now, Ryan, before I talk about my past with Stevie Wonder and experiencing him as an artist, I will ask you, what is your experience with Stevie Wonder as an artist leading up into this episode?
So, with Stevie himself, I grew up as a band kid, very much as did you, throughout, the grade school system, the public school system. Not the public school has anything to do with, my knowledge of Stevie Wonder, but I digress. But yeah, he was an artist that was bound to come across my radar, for one reason or another, due to my upbringing as a human being, as a musical human being. So songs that I enjoyed growing up of his is Isn't She Lovely, Superstition, I Just Called to Say I Love You. And, I'm going to be honest with you. Well, and also Higher Ground. But I think I enjoyed Higher Ground more because, like I explained in, our overview of, our musical tastes or musical upbringings. At one point in time, the Red Hot Chili Peppers was my favorite band growing up. And they covered that song. So, I was just like, oh, hey, yeah, that's kind of cool to, connect the 2 dots there. But in terms of, outside of a band context, of, growing up as a music kid, in high school, I never really have dove into Stevie Wonder for the sake of, listening to a whole album. There might have been a time in my life where I listened to his Songs in the Key of Life, which is, his big, magnum opus, album. But I can't, like, I can't tell you if I ever did. I know I probably did at one point, but dude, I've listened to a lot of music in my life. Like, unless it's like stayed with me and I have it in my record collection, it might go in the metaphorical, like, musical freezer that we've described in a lot of points of our show. So yeah, that's basically it. Like, I have a lot of respect for him. Whenever you brought him up as the next artist that we were going to cover, I was just like, yeah, let's go, because I've always been kind of excited about, like, covering him as a whole. So I'm going to flip the question back over to you, Matthew. What is your experience with Stevie Wonder? Are you guys best friends? Do you have his phone number in your dial-up book? Are you in a fantasy football league with him? Like, tell me, what is your relationship?
None of those things are the case. I don't know how Stevie Wonder would even play fantasy football, but that's a philosophical question. I'll just keep to the side for right now. So my experience, kind of like yours, I was bound to listen to him eventually, and I did. Because there was a period of my youth where I listened to oldies radio, and they play songs of his like My Cherie Amour or Fingertips or I Was Made to Love Her. Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours is another one I'll throw in there. Just stuff that was very poppy and very like of his Motown youth. And eventually I would get to the other stuff like, I Wish or Superstition or Sir Duke. But ultimately, I was pretty much relegating myself to just the hits up until about high school. Then, like you had mentioned, I am to a band kid. And as it turns out, for, I believe, our junior year, one of the shows we performed at halftime at Beaver Falls was a Stevie Wonder show. And so the songs that we were playing, like, I was aware of Superstition and I think we did Sir Duke there as well. I kind of knew those songs already. But there were other ones like Living for the City and Don't You Worry About a Thing where I was like, wait a minute, these are new. I'm not familiar with these Stevie Wonder songs. And that was about the same time I was getting into the evergreen mentions of Rolling Stone. I was starting to get into them. And so I realized that, hey, these songs I'm playing in the band halftime show are from this one album that happens to be, in the top 25 of Rolling Stone's greatest albums of all time. Maybe I should check it out. And so I did. And eventually I was just like, whoa, that's an album that's pretty good. And I do own this on vinyl. Spoiler alert, kind of, sort of. And it's one of those albums I've always kind of come back to every now and then for reasons I'll get into. But yeah, after that, I didn't really get too much more into his albums outside of maybe Songs in the Key of Life or another I own on vinyl, which is Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. If you really want a trip to think, oh my goodness, is that actually Stevie Wonder? It is. But yeah, that's pretty much my background of Stevie Wonder. Started out as a pop artist in my mind, and then all of a sudden became a little bit more than that.
And I totally respect that, man. And like, I kind of wish, I don't know, I'm very happy with like how, like, my musical taste and my musical upbringing has, like, transpired up until this point. But like, I kind of wish I maybe took a similar route to you, like, diving into, like, Rolling Stone and, like, going into, like, classic records. Because, like, I feel like that is a very foundational kind of knowledge. Like, I went through, like, my classic rock phase, but, like, I never dove into, like, Motown or, like, Stevie Wonder up until this point. But, I mean, I've dove into Motown because we covered Motown before, but, like, Stevie Wonder. Anyways, I'm done rambling here, man. I am just feeling too high from the excitement of, like, diving into Stevie Wonder. And, oh, hey, Matthew, the opening track off of the Innervisions here is indeed Too High. So I feel like we get this gravy train rolling. And why don't you start us off, man?
I will gladly start us off with Too High off of Innervisions. And at the beginning, you get this really tight funk groove featuring just a little, like, almost wah-wah bass, some, like, low organ, some really heavy drums by Stevie himself, which, once again, he's playing the majority of the instruments on this track, so he is just absolutely bringing it. And not only that, but then you cut away from the funk, you get these, and then it just sort of does this real jazzy descending chord phrase, back to the funk, back to the doo-doo-doos, and then to the first verse. And already Stevie is pulling himself even further away from Motown. This isn't your assembly line Funk Brothers type of piece. Like, he is going full funk, he is going full jazz, and he is full going independence here. So he is establishing that up front with these jazzy, weird chord changes. It almost sounds like a funkier version of a band we've covered before on the show, which is Steely Dan, which is a little weird because Steely Dan was just starting their career around this time. So what they would be known for didn't come for another few years. But if you're familiar with Steely Dan and you're thinking about stuff like Black Cow or Asia, think a little funkier than that. Like, that's the kind of stuff that Too High is reminiscent of. Or to put it another way, it would be a jazzier version of stuff that was done about a year or two ago by R&B singer Curtis Mayfield on the album Superfly. And speaking of Superfly, that is clearly an inspiration for what Stevie Wonder is going for here, because lyrically speaking, this song is about drugs and why drugs are bad, and you should not get, as the song says, too high, because you'll never touch the ground and you might end up dying because drugs do that to you. So yeah, this probably was influenced a little bit by the likes of either What's Going On by Marvin Gaye or Superfly by Curtis Mayfield. Not that that's a bad thing. Superfly is a great album, which is definitely worth checking out. And yeah, this what really makes this track stand out is just, again, how musically fearless it can be. I mean, because there are parts where it goes into the same familiar bridge, but the chords are incredibly different. Like, they're up about 3 different keys, and you're just like, wait, why did they do this? It sounds good, but why did they do this? And Stevie Wonder himself sings very nicely on this track. I wouldn't put it as top performance on this album. We'll get to that later on in a couple different respects. But overall, just the daringness of this track and the ongoing progression of Stevie Wonder as an artist being established on this track, I really enjoyed this opener. It is not in my top 3, however, and for full disclosure, out of these 9 tracks, I have a top 3, and that is all.
I'm right there with you, man. Like, I have a top 3 and a bottom nothing, and it would, not to get into, like, so much of my overall thoughts about the album, but it would be kind of weird for me to, like, label anything as a bottom track, because, like, I'll just get into my thoughts about Too High, and then we can expand upon that statement there. But with Too High here, I agree with you that it's a great way to start off the album. I feel like I'm a little lower on the track than you, but not so much as I'm like, this is a poo-poo kind of track or anything like that, because I just illustrated that I don't have a bottom track here in this review. But yeah, a couple of things I want to talk about. You talked about, like, the little vocalizations at the beginning, and like, that instantly hooked me into the track, and like, just the whole groove as a whole was just, like, very captivating, and it was just like, oh yeah, this is pretty nice. This is, like, a nice way to, like, ease into the album. And speaking about, like, ways to ease into the album, the melody on the chorus. Like, one thing that I'm going to talk about in this review as a whole is, like, Stevie's ability to construct a melody. Like, he has, like, as a product of Motown of that era, like, obviously, like, very, like, I don't want to say musically trained. Well, like, due to your background, like, due to your review, you basically highlighted that he's very musically versed, and, like, he's brought up through the Motown machine, so he has an ear for melody, and you can hear that in the chorus of this song entirely. I will, like, nitpick the song a little bit. I found the transition from the first verse into the chorus to be just a little bit awkward, but not so much of like, oh my god, this is a skip kind of track. It was just like I felt like it wasn't smooth. It could have been done a little bit better. But I just can't overstress like how well this song does groove. Like there's even moments where you talk about where the chords are changing and everything gets a little bit more funky, and you can feel like, the tempo's kind of shifting, but they never lose the pocket, and it's just very good. It's very pleasant to the ears to hear, and it's just an overall like pleasant experience. It's a great opener to the album. You already talked about the fact that this is an anti-drug song. You already highlighted the fact that this basically highlights the effects of doing drugs, and you end up dying from said drugs. And I did appreciate the lyrics illustrating that through and through. Very much like a I don't want to compare like apples to oranges here, but like off of the Spanish love songs review that we did, like one of the tracks off of there basically highlighted the effects of like generational like trauma from like substance abuse. So I did appreciate that. And I did have a lyrical highlight here. It's when Stevie's talking about she's the girl in her life, but her world's a superficial paradise. She had a chance to make it big more than once or twice. So, like, you talk about this person who has, like, endless promise and, like, has a chance to make it big, and then drugs happen. So, yeah. I did appreciate that narrative there. Where I'm landing with Too High as a track, though, I'm going to put it in the what I like to consider to be like a middle of the road kind of track, but for all intents and purposes with this review, we're just going to put Too High into the good song bucket.
I'm very much cool with that. I too am going to put it in the good song bucket because I think it's a good song. I don't think it's an elite song, but it's a very strong, solid album opener, which, again, I think maybe if... I guess if I had any nitpick about it, which this is not a nitpick, it's just an observation, it does get so adventurous that it might be doing a little too much for its own good. But even then, I'm just like, no, the groove's still tight and everything comes across very nicely. So, yeah, Too High, good song in my book, and as you said, good song in yours as well. So moving on to the next track, Ryan, I'll throw it to you for this one, which is Visions.
So with Visions here, we get very much a shift of gears from like from the previous track, Too High, and like I would say for the rest of the album, this track here stands out very prominently, and like I like what it's bringing to the table. Like things are dialed back on the funk here, starting right out of the gate, and you focus more on the song composition, and I'm always a fan of that as a whole. The one thing that I did enjoy about the song as a whole is the instrumentation is locked in so tight, and I really enjoyed the nooks and crannies about the instrumentation where things were interweaving with each other and everything was just working out so well. Like there's a lot of playfulness with the instrumentation. I very much appreciated that. And outside of the instrumentation, just for a quick second, Stevie's vocal performance here is pretty solid as well. Like you can really get the emotion that he's portraying from his vocals there. So like always a fan of that. And shout out to Stevie Wonder as a vocalist as a whole. Like never really want to like hit like high notes, but I really appreciate his ability to like emote effectively. I'm always a fan of a vocalist's ability to do that. Going back to the instrumentation though, another thing I did enjoy about it as a whole is you get the contrast between traditional like instrumentation, like traditional like melody with a stripped back song like this versus what I call it like kind of like an Eastern influence, like Eastern Indian kind of influence, where things are not so straightforward and it's a little bit more like chaotic and like free form kind of instrumentation. So I did appreciate that. That came across pretty well, and like the song itself like talks about like this ideal society where we are at peace, like not only globally but internally with ourselves. And I did have a lyrical highlight here with Visions. It's when he's talking about, but what I'd like to know is, could a place like this exist so beautiful, or do we have to find our wings and fly away to the vision in our mind? And like I just, like hearing that, in the year of our Lord 2026, where everything is basically a hellscape. Like, yeah, like, that was that came across pretty effectively. So overall, with Visions as a whole, like, I'm much higher on this track than I was compared to Too High, pun slightly intended. But yeah, but not so much that this popped into a top 3 contention. So this was what I like to call a cut track, or for the context of putting songs into buckets. Like, this goes into the great song bucket.
Fair. I'd say for me, this leans a little bit more towards the good song bucket. Not to say that I dislike the song at all. I think it's a great song too, or goodish, I guess. The point being, first of all, I'll start with the instrumentation that you talked about. It is a very smooth transition from the funk and just upbeat pace of Too High into the very slow, smooth, jazzy acoustics of Visions. And the way that the electric guitar sort of works in tandem with the acoustic guitar works so well. Because the acoustic guitar is what's holding the rhythm down. Like, it's the one that's just creating this very ambient, like you said, almost like Eastern Indian or like jazz nightclub type of vibe. And the electric guitar is just sort of echoing what it's doing. And what I love about the way that the guitar isn't consistent, because at the beginning you get sort of like da 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 da, but there are parts where it just sort of fades in and out. Like, some might see that as like lazy noodling, but another interpretation, maybe one that's a little too deep, but I'm going to go for it anyway, is that it sort of echoes how the visions that you spoke about in the lyrics sort of fade in and out and don't seem as clear one day as they do the next. So I don't know if that was Stevie's intent, but that's kind of how it sounded to me, and I think that's really, really cool. And that chorus that you mentioned is very nice, because I think it is the lyrical highlight of the track as well, where Stevie just sort of says, I'd like to know if this is possible, or if we just have to make it possible in a way that we may not want to. Which, again, is very hard-hitting, not just in the year of 2026, but me being in my mid-30s, yeah. So the only other thing I have to add to what you said about Visions is that I'm surprised you didn't bring up right before the final chorus, where Stevie repeats that lyrical highlight you mentioned, where everything just completely goes away. Like, I had written in my notes, Ryan Kink pause, parentheses, I think. So I'm not sure if that's something that you noticed, or if that wasn't quite what you consider a kink-like pause.
I would say so, man. And upon further reflection, I didn't have that in my notes, but thinking about it, yeah, that's very much Ryan Kern's musical kink right there.
Fair. So overall, I like Visions. It's a track I've probably gotten a little less enthusiastic about over the years. Not that it's a bad track. Again, I consider it a very, very good track. But I'd say it's firmly in the good song bucket as well. I would probably put, if we're adopting the great song bucket, I would put Too High in the great song bucket and Visions in the good song bucket.
All right. So we kind of flip-flop in terms of appreciation between the two opening tracks. I'm kind of curious to see how the rest of the review is gonna go, because I feel like we might share the same favorite song. I could be mistaken. I don't know. I'm just a humble man who puts ketchup on a hot dog where people want mustard on a hot dog instead. I digress. Matthew, we must move on to the next song here, and it is indeed Living for the City.
Yes, Living for the City. And for full disclosure, I'm starting to become more of a barbecue sauce on my hot dog type of girly, but that's another debate for another time. So, Living for the City. This track. It starts with what I would still consider one of the most foreboding, doomy, intense keyboard synth intros of all time. Like it just has this warbly, like menacing effect that just instantly lets you know, hey, things are about to get dark. I hope you're ready. And after that, it just gets into the hard, tough groove of not just Stevie's drums, but Stevie's vocals. Because after two songs of Stevie being jazzy and light, he is being gruff, he is being direct, he is being angry, and you can hear it so well. It sounds so good. And not just because, Stevie's a great singer who could sing both soft and hard, but the lyrics that match his rough singing are themselves pretty rough and explicit. Like, he talks in the first verses about how a boy's born in Hardtown, Mississippi, and his mom and dad, are just trying to make ends meet, living just enough for the city. Then the next verse talks about his sister who has to walk to school, and her brother who is very smart but can't find a job because, and this was a lyrical highlight for me and always will be, to find a job, it's like a haystack needle, because where he lives, they don't use colored people. Stevie is not soft stroking this one. He is putting it right out on the plate, raw and in your face, and it is so brutally deep, and it's so good. And not only that, but once again, we get the musical adventures of Stevie Wonder on this track, because I guess you would call it a chorus, doesn't have any lyrics. It just has him and background singers going da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, in 3/4 no less, switching up time signatures in the middle of the song because he's Stevie Wonder, he can do what the hell he wants. And again, it sounds amazing. Like, he is just showing off, essentially, in so many ways on this track. And then you get to the jam session after the second verse, where you get that little subtle addition of hand claps, which really just turns us into, musically speaking, a party, even though this song is not a party whatsoever. And it just grooves so hard. And the way that they just sing living just enough, living for the city, and Stevie just gets angrier and angrier and gruffer. Like, it's the same kind of gruffness where it's just like, yeah, I'm pissed off, but I'm very happy, actually, because I know what I'm talking about, and you're going to hear about it. It's incredibly passive-aggressive, and I'm very much here for it, considering the subject matter. Then you get to the interlude of the song, or the skit, if you want to call it. And, man, like, obviously this is fiction, but how far from fiction is it really? Like, because I've watched Seinfeld growing up. I know that there's that element of, okay, this seems ridiculous, but it's not entirely implausible. And furthermore, and disclaimer for those of you who are listening to this and have never seen either of our faces, I'm white. So the possibility of this scenario happening to me as opposed to someone of color, as Stevie's talking about, is much minimal. And what he's describing here is a situation where a guy gets off in New York City, skyscrapers and everything. Somebody hands him some drugs and runs away. The police target the guy now with the drugs, who is confused because, hey, these aren't his drugs, but the police don't care because he's black. They send him to 10 years in prison. And then after that, they throw him in the slammer, use a word we're not going to use here. And then it gets into the final verse where Stevie is singing very gruffly. He's singing like almost down an octave and just growling from the pit of his stomach to tell you that, hey, this guy, he's walking the streets of New York City and he's going to die soon from breathing in air pollution. And guess what? If things don't change, we're screwed. It's over. We're done. And again, it just, the whole song builds in a way that few do. Like, there are so few songs, like maybe Bohemian Rhapsody, maybe Stairway to Heaven, that reaches this kind of musical build. And I wouldn't even say either of those tracks have the socioeconomic knowledge that this one is willing to showcase. And the musical showcase matches it at every single turn. And also, it has a drum solo, which is kind of cool. You usually don't get R&B songs with drum solos, so I very much appreciated that before that final outro, which just sounds so good. Yeah, I don't think I have to say it, but I'm going to anyway. Living for the City is not just my favorite song on this album, and number one in my top 3. It is one of the best songs of all time. Like, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, man, yeah. I very much respect that, and I'm just gonna piggyback off of a couple of things that you mentioned about the track, because you did an excellent job laying out what this track is bringing to the table. So you talked about the start of the track on a lyrical front, and then the interlude happens where he gets framed for the whole drug possession thing because he's black, and then it kicks right back into the last little part there. And the lyrics change up, but one thing I did notice about the vocal delivery as a whole, you kind of alluded to this a little bit in your dissection about the track, but in that last part there, things are just gruff, where I almost think it's a different singer singing that last verse, but it's phenomenal nonetheless. And in that section there, you get one of my lyrical highlight that I did want to share with the listener and you as well is it's when he's saying, "I hope you hear inside my voice of sorrow that it motivates you to make a better tomorrow." Fuck me, dude. That lyric writing is just it's interesting that this character in this story has every reason to be nope, there's no tomorrow, there's no hope for tomorrow, but even after everything that he's been through, he still holds on to that kernel of hope that things can get better and will get better. So yeah, I'm just absolutely amazed at the lyric writing here. The song is structured as a tale of a black man who grew up during the civil rights era in Mississippi. We kind of talked about how this guy has faced hardships. He's seen the hardships that his family has faced, but he decides not to be brought down by that and moves to New York City to chase his dreams. And we already kind of talk about how he gets framed and gets disillusioned by life. So, but yeah, rewinding here a little bit to the start of the track, I just love how this song here grew so effectively well, and especially in the verses, you can feel there's a force that is being driven by the instrumentation and the performance from Stevie. It's so hypnotic, magnetic, use whatever adjective that you want to throw there, it's just so amazing. And the breaks between the verses with that little instrumental lick that is being played, it's so good. I'm always a fan of instrumental licks that are used to guide the listener back into the next section, but it's just absolute pleasure for me. It's every single spin I've done of the track, it was always a pleasure for me to hear that. And just I very much like how the track does transition into that interlude section that we've talked about, where he gets framed for drugs. Things kind of just progress into just a jam session, but then you get the sound clips of oh hey, yeah, I made it to New York City, and then he gets thrown in jail, as we already highlighted. So yeah, my fears are alleviated because, well, not my fears, but I was just kind of intrigued to see if we were gonna share the same favorite song on this record, and we do. The Living for the City is easily my favorite track off the whole record. And when we get later on into a couple of the other tracks, one track specifically in this review, like going into the review, I didn't know that Living for the City was going to be my favorite, but I can't deny it, man. It's such a good song. It has all the harmonic, like all the benchmarks of what I do to measure a great song. And even the fact that, like, it progresses in that, like, Bohemian Rhapsody, Stairway to Heaven, like Welcome to the Black Parade kind of like aesthetic, where it's just such a big song. Like, I can't deny, man. This song fucking rules.
It really does. I'm very glad that you and I agree on this. I mean, to me, it's a shame too, because, like, I know, like, demographics being what they are, a lot of, like, old rock heads would probably not throw this in their conversation. Some would, but a lot of people would say, oh, rock and roll is king, and, Stairway to Heaven, and Freebird, Whipping Post. It's like, okay, yes, but also Living for the City is one of the greatest songs of all time. Don't let your prejudices, prejudice you away from a song so good like this, because, again, it just hits so hard and deep and rolls so well. Like, if this was just an instrumental, like, this could kick the ass of, like, so many other songs with lyrics from other R&B artists throughout the decade. Like, that's how good this song is just on a musical front. And then you add the lyrics being as biting and as delivered with passion and rage as they are. It's a no-brainer, dude. Like, it's so great. And I think we'll leave it off at that. And we'll go ahead into the final track off side A of Innervisions, which is Golden Lady, and Ryan, I will throw it to you.
So with Golden Lady here, this song kind of starts out with a bait and switch kind of thing. Like, you kind of, like, starting out, you think it's going to be like a piano ballad because things kind of start out very smooth. But the track kind of just morphs into like a funky kind of, groove. And I very much appreciated that. That was pretty cool. The instrumentation, though, like, under everything, is kind of going, like, a little batshit crazy underneath everything. Like, because you get Stevie doing his smooth vocals and everything like that. Like, it's very much a love song at its core. And I don't really have a lyrical highlight because, like, I believe the lyrics here are basically window dressing, but it's a love song nonetheless. But like, the instrumentation, though, the stuff I wanted to highlight, like, everything, the drums, the synths, the bass are all doing really interesting things that are just like I actually had to pause a couple times. I'm like, oh, hot damn, dude. Okay, you didn't need to do that, but you did. Okay, cool. When you do get the section where you get that brief instrumental break, I found that to be solid. And also the melody in the chorus, like the sense of melody that's Stevie's bringing in that chorus is really, really good. Very, like, again, I can't stress, like, I very much appreciate a good Stevie Wonder melody. And also, one thing I did appreciate about the track as a whole is the way that the instrumentation swells to match the vocals in the chorus is a highlight for me. I'm always a fan of instrumentation matching vocals when we're doing, like, swells and everything like that. So, like, again, that was very, very solid for me. And yeah, I would say, like, this came very, very, very close to being a top track for me, just for the pure fact of what was going on the instrumental front. But yeah, there's a track much later on that beat it out. But I'm kind of putting this into the great song bucket with, like, one, like, one toe into, like, a top 3 kind of territory, which I'm going to label as, like, an amazing song bucket.
Fair. My thoughts on Golden Lady, a lot of what I will say echoes what you said. First of all, that piano intro that sort of transitions out of Living for the City into the light funk that is Golden Lady is very well executed. I did appreciate that. And really, this is just a piano keyboard tour de force of a song. Because I agree with you, Stevie's very much going for the light funk, and the lyrics are not really very important here. I mean, basically, I could boil it down to, hey, damn girl, you is gorgeous. And that's pretty much what the song is. It's not very complicated. It's pretty much Stevie saying, painting an ode to a lovely lady, a golden lady, if you will. But at the same time, like you said, the way that the keyboard sound, particularly the synthesizer, I thought was a super highlight off this track for me. On the chorus, whenever Stevie stops singing, you get that sort of little echo that goes on. Like, for those of you who've ever heard the song Billy, Don't Be a Hero, kind of like that, except a lot classier, where the call and response on the chorus between Stevie and his synthesizer. And again, you would get, it's weird. Like, one second you're hearing synthesizer, one you're hearing piano, then you're hearing like organ. And it's just like so many keyboards on this song, and it's nuts. And somehow it all comes together and coalesces. And again, sounds very, very good. Ultimately, I would probably put this in the good song bucket, maybe in the great song bucket, because it's a rather flawless song, but it doesn't it does have the unfortunate candor of being a light love song that follows up Living for the City. It's kind of like following up, Schindler's List with Notting Hill. Not necessarily the same type of volume or, kind of mood, but still nothing wrong with it. Spoiler, I have not seen either of those movies, so don't come at me. The point being that Golden Lady is very much, to me, an album track, considering the whole that it is, Innervisions. But it's really, really good, and the way that Stevie changes keys 9,000 times at the end of this song, that's just him showing off and proving he still is like one of the best musicians in the world. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah. Man. What a good track, man. And Stevie Wonder, what a musician, man. But before we discuss more Stevie Wonder and reach a higher ground with diving into the rest of the review here, Matthew, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay. Cool. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, but I'm glad you decided to ask me. What is that question?
So, if the dear listener out there is very much enjoying what we're bringing here to the table with this episode here specifically, and they want to help, support what you and I do on a week in, week out basis, what are some ways that they can help show some support, some love, and other ways that they can help connect with us on different platforms that are not purely audio-based?
Well, some of the ways they can help us out, first of all, is to continue to listen to Hey, Listen to This. And some of the platforms that you can hear us on are pretty much any podcasting platform of your choice. We're talking stuff like Spotify, Apple Music, Pocket Cast, anywhere where you can find great podcasts, we're among them. And if you're listening to us on there and you like what you hear, feel free to give us that 5-star rating or leave a comment saying what you liked about the episode. We are also uploading our episodes to YouTube every week, so if you prefer using YouTube or YouTube Music to have us on in the background, that is an option that you have. We upload our episodes in video form every week. And if you're on YouTube and you like what you hear, give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe to our channel where we drop our uploads every Saturday, most of the time. Also, if you like what you hear and you want to share with a friend, or you want to share with multiple friends because you're not sure which friends would like something like this, well, you are in luck because we are on social media as well. Particularly, we are on Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you are looking for us on there, you can either type in the name of our show, which is Hey, Listen to This, or you can use our username, which is ttheylisten. Again, that is TT, the word hey, and the word listen. That is our username on social media. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email address you can reach us at. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. If you want to give us some feedback, whether it's positive or critical, or if you want to recommend a future album that you'd like us to talk about, because we've done listener requests in the past and we'd like to do that again. So again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky if you want to reach out to us on social media, and also places such as Apple Music, Spotify, and podcasts if you want to listen to us, YouTube as well. And for those of you who have done that throughout the first, according to my computer, 111 plus episodes of Hey, Listen to This, thank you. Again, we are just a couple of dudes who love to talk about music. We're not sponsored by any type of razors for your scrotum or video game for your telephone. Don't give me that look, Ryan. Those exist, and you know which one I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention by name because we're not sponsored by them. We're just two dudes who love to talk about music, and we're very happy that you could spend some time with us. And as always, Ryan, I am very glad to spend some time with you. Thank you for being a great co-host and putter-upper of my occasional nonsense with stuff like that, but also just a great person to discuss music with week in, week out.
And the compliment goes right back to you, man. I always have enjoyed, our adventures down different musical rabbit holes. There's some blind spots that I do have, like Stevie Wonder, for example. But then there's other, pure enjoyment factors of, diving into, the Turtles or, Jellyfish, or even, something, I know it's music not for us, but diving into the Taylor Swift review that we did with the Life of a Showgirl, or even the Bad Bunny review that we literally just did. It's always very nice for me to explore different music styles, and it's always nice to have conversations with you. I always have a blast. And you know me, I always have very funky shenanigans with things that come out of my mouth. So I appreciate the random stuff that comes out of your mouth because it keeps me on my toes. So yeah, and also dear listener out there, I hope through our adventure, me and Matt's adventure of doing Hey, Listen to This, we also encourage you to dive into albums and think more seriously about them, as opposed to being oh, hey, let me log into my music streaming service of choice and go on to, what is trending on a playlist and just put it on a playlist and, just consider it background noise. No disrespect to music listeners out there who do that, but I think I could speak for me and Matthew that it's more rewarding when you actually listen to an album as opposed to, just have it on the background, because to steal a little phrase from you, sometimes music can suck if you're not paying attention to it.
I like that. I like that. I like that little twist.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, Matthew, we must progress on here now that we've officially laid out all the twists and given the listeners a way to support our show. We must press on to higher ground with discussing the B-side of Innervisions. And, well, hey, look at that. The next track is indeed Higher Ground. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So Higher Ground, this is actually the biggest hit off this whole album. This album had 3 hits. We already talked about Living for the City, which reached number 8. Astonishingly, even though it was a edited single form, which took out, the bad words. And then there's another one we'll talk about a little later on. But Higher Ground reached the top 5 and reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. And there's a good reason why. For those who don't know what a clavinet sounds like, or any type of real wah-wah type keyboard, here you go. This is an introduction to the keyboard sounds of the 70s if you have not realized them yet listening to this album. Because it starts with that real bouncy sort of wow, 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 wow. Obviously not like that. I'm also trying to avoid copyright and also just aren't good at mimicking that kind of stuff. And here you get Stevie really just going full force as a one-man band on this song. His drumming is great. His keyboard playing is great. The bass sounds great. The guitar sounds great. And it just has such an infectious rolling feel to it. It just keeps going and going and doesn't really stop until it reaches that highest ground. Lyrically speaking, this song is pretty simplistic. I mean, it's basically just, if you're somebody, keep on doing what you're doing. But a lot of times when he says that, he doesn't necessarily mean it. He's being very sarcastic and bitter about it. Particularly in my lyrical highlight off this track, which is powers keep on lying while your people keep on dying. World, keep on turning, because it won't be too long. Like, he sounds so happy when he sings that, but he's just like, hey guys, guess what? If you guys don't get yourselves straight together and do the right thing, we're all gonna die. Happy trails, do. Like, Stevie, like, man, just he's brutally not, again, holding back whatsoever. But aside from that, like, the rest of it is basically, lovers keep on loving, teachers keep on teaching, preachers keep on preaching. And then the chorus very much just coalesces until, again, he won't keep on trying until he reaches his highest ground. Like, it's not super deep, and again, has the unfortunate caveat of following one of the deepest tracks in human history. But at the same time, man, it just grooves so well and really, really just slaps. Deserves to be a hit. Sounds fun, sounds bouncy. The drumming on the outro, by the way, is really nice because he's just going those fills where it's just like did it, but doesn't lose any momentum. He's not like he's showing off without losing the beat, which is always really nice, especially when it comes to R&B music. So yeah, Higher Ground, great song. Not in my top 3.
Not in your top 3. Wow, that's a. I don't want to say that's a spicy take, but that's a. That's a take. Therefore, by definition, so I don't even know why I said it like that. But yeah, for me, Higher Ground here, like I kind of illustrated at the beginning of this episode here, I have a little bit of a prior experience with this song, a la Red Hot Chili Peppers cover. So I was always going to be a little bit partial to this song going into the review, just based off of my personal history. But getting into the nooks and crannies about the song, like that funky lick at the beginning, and it's basically heard throughout the whole song, like you kind of illustrated, like it's so good. Like the performance is just top notch. It's just so good, man. And just outside of that lick, though, like on the instrumental front, like the little licks that you hear from the keys at certain parts in the song, they add a very nice texture. And also, like, the drums are doing a very solid job keeping the beat, as you illustrated in your dissection about the track. Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to talk about on the instrumental front because everything's so, it's very much a straightforward kind of song. But
another thing I kind of just want to talk about with the song as a whole is the lyrics, and you kind of illustrated through and through what the lyrics are basically about. It basically is kind of like a anthem for just to keep fighting on how life is despite how the world is turning and how powers are basically conspiring to make the world a worse place, and before you know it, time's gonna run out. It's a very much kind of a, hey, keep on fighting, but it's an interesting kind of message there. The lyrical highlight, though, that I had in the track as a whole was actually in the chorus. It's I like the idea of the reincarnation aspect of the song, where he's talking, I'm so darn glad he let me try it again, because my last time on earth I lived a whole world of sin. I'm so glad that I know more than I knew then. Gotta keep on trying till I reach my highest ground. And there's one aspect of that you could take it from a Christianity, born again kind of aspect of it. But I think what CB was going for here was more of a Buddhist reincarnation aspect of it, which either way, I'm not opposed to on how either aspect of how that transpire. Well, how that plays out. But yeah, overall though, with Higher Ground, for better for worse, like I did have this in my top three, at number 2, and that is for the pure reason that, like, like I kind of talked about at the start of my discussion about the track. I had prior knowledge about the track. It's a very good track in my opinion, and I would consider it to be my second favorite track off the whole record. And it's interesting. Like, coming into the review, I expected this to be my top track, but then I live for the city, so there's that, man. So, but yeah, I dig the track a whole hell of a lot, man.
I do too, and for the record, just because I don't have it in my top 3 doesn't mean I don't like it. To me, this goes easily in the great song bucket, and this probably on another day could be maybe a top. Like, this is probably a cut track, but this is also one of those tracks I've never really considered. I don't know if I'd put in my top 10 Stevie Wonder songs, if I'm going to be completely honest. It's a great song, but to me, they're just songs I would just absolutely run through a brick wall for. And this doesn't quite lead that territory, but this is a really, 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 really good song nonetheless. So that being said, I will throw it to you for the next track on side B, which is Jesus, Children of America.
Oh, what a name of a track, man! It's the next. It's what Green Day is going to open up the Super Bowl with, from what I hear. No, anyways, I digress. But no, with Jesus, Children of America, I found this to be a very, very interesting song. I very much enjoyed how the track starts off as a kind of a low-key kind of song. You're not really expecting a whole lot from it, especially coming out of Higher Ground. But then picks it into, kind of a groovy kind of track, and I did dig that. And within that groove, the instrumentation's doing a very good job driving the beat. If you listen in, everything's very detailed, and it's very awesome. I very much appreciated what was going on there. The interplay between the vocals and the backing vocals, it was a treat for me to hear. And yeah, just the outro as a whole, I very much like the instrumentation and how the song was allowing the track to breathe, pretty much. So that was a highlight for me. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about Jesus, Children of America outside of that. The song as a whole, though, is a praise for religion and also kind of a critique of those who don't practice what they preach. And within that, I did have a lyrical highlight about how I did appreciate how the overall structure of the lyrics, and how it was good. And I also appreciate the direct questions that you find within the track of, are you standing for everything you talk about? Are you happy when you stick a needle in your vein? So, those lyrics are pretty straightforward and honest, especially within the critique of, Christianity as a whole. But yeah, it's a good song. I did originally have this as a cut track, an awesome song bucket kind of territory for me, but in all actual honesty, I'm probably going to move it out of the great song bucket and kind of plop it into the good song bucket. It's a good song nonetheless, but nothing really here that's making me be oh yeah, this is what Jesus, Children of America was talking about. So.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of right there with you. In fact, I'll start by saying that the way the track opens, musically, you're absolutely right. It just starts very lightly and then just kind of keeps building up and up. But I will say lyrically, it's not super deep. And if I did have one critique on this album whatsoever, it was that opening verse. Because Stevie sings it very nicely, and the drums and the hi-hat are working very well. But just the way he says, I love you, Jesus, Children of America, and then he just sort of mixes sentences together by saying, Jesus Loves You of America. I'm thinking, that's not great. That's not great. But I was able to forgive that and move along because the rest of the song is much more coherent. And musically, it does a really good job of blending both funk and gospel, not just in message, but in music, and it works really well. The highlight for me musically is how Stevie is backing himself up on vocals, the one-man choir, if you will, like doing the call and response thing. I thought that was really, really cool. And yeah, musically, it almost feels like a mini Living for the City or a Living for the City light. Like it's kind of got that edge, that bite, but not really like, going for the whole head. It's like just a little nibble of critique. So yeah, it's got platitudes, but the music's great. So I would say this is a firm, good song bucket contender for me. It's a solid track.
And I would agree, man. And I liked how you illustrated this as being like a poor man's living for the city. So yeah, and I can agree with that for one reason or another. But I feel like overall though, thinking about your analysis about the track and my analysis, I feel like you're a little bit higher on the track, but it's still a good track nonetheless. But I also kind of noticed we have 3 songs left, and you've yet to reveal. Unless I'm mistaken, and I could be because I'm a man. Sometimes I don't use my turn signal when turning, but yeah, I noticed that you have yet to reveal the rest of your top 3 outside of Living for the City. Am I correct? You still have 2 tracks left to go.
I still have 2 tracks left to go that are in my top 3, and we have 3 tracks to go.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. And I do have one more track within my top 3 left to go. So we can metaphorically high five with one of the tracks here. And I feel like we might. Who knows? But that being said, Matthew, we must dive into the last leg of the record here and discover if we're going to metaphorically high five, and if not, what they say, all in love is fair, man. So hey, look, that's the next track off the record here, man. So Matthew, the floor is yours. Why don't you take this one, man?
Yeah, All in Love is Fair, and to be completely honest, this is a track that going into this album was probably the one I thought about the least, because I figured, okay, here we have a song similar in the category of Golden Lady, where it's very much just a pretty solid platitudinal love ballad. But after repeated listens, I still have those thoughts, but at the same time, I gotta give credit where credit is due. First of all, the opening riff to this track seems very similar in tone and execution to Visions, but it's on the piano instead of guitar, which does create a bit of a symbolic change. So instead of the strumming on the guitar and the noodling, you get the noodling on the piano, and it does create for a bit more of a lush vibe. And surprisingly, Stevie Wonder is good at piano. In other news, water is wet and the sky is made of sky. So, yeah. And then it gets to the lyrics, which I would say much like Golden Lady are window dressing. But man, to me, honestly, if not for Living for the City and maybe Higher Ground, I would probably say this is Stevie's most powerful vocal on the entire record. His balladeering voice is just so strong. Especially when he goes, all in is fair in love. And I'm like, whoa, this dude can sing. He is not leaving anything on the table as far as performance. He was really strong here. So yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say really about All in Love is Fair. Because again, the piano playing is great, the singing is incredible, but lyrically it's not super, in detail. Again, it's about being in love, and love is a fair game, and with love, sometimes things happen. So very platitudinal lyrically. So as good as Stevie's performance is, this is not in my top 3.
All right, so that basically kind of spoils the rest of the review in terms of what's left of your top three. But where does stuff rank? We will find out because that's how things work out. But anyways, with All in Love is Fair, I agree with you. Stevie just sounds so good, and he again, like you said, his piano playing is fantastic, and it's probably thinking about it right now, I was gonna maybe kind of put this up there against Living for the City, or even higher ground, or even my third favorite track, which we'll get to eventually. But yeah, I prefer his performances in there. But again, nonetheless, he just sounds really good here. And the whole track, you know what it kind of reminded me of, dude? It kind of reminded me of that old, I did it my way, that kind of feel, but instead of what that was going for, which is that track goes for a more bombastic, kind of old timey kind of feel. You get almost kind of an acceptance of doom here with All in Love is Fair. So I did appreciate that kind of lens that Stevie was putting in front of this track here. The gradual rise and fall in dynamics in the track is played off so low key, and before you know it, you get blasted in the face of a wall of sound, and it's almost and this is a metaphor that I've recently just discovered, so forgive me for being a novice in metaphors, but it's almost the proper way to boil a frog, in that you can't just boil a frog and turn the temperature up to 1,000 right away, because the frog's gonna jump out. You gotta gently raise the temperature, and before you know it, the frog's oh crap, I'm in a boiling pot of water, I can't get out. So that's how you boil a frog, ladies and gentlemen. So if you, dear listener out there, were wondering how do I boil a frog, that's how you do it. Anyway, so the track as a whole, though, it's essentially a broken heart song, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit in terms of window dressing, because I did find this one section here to be pretty impactful in terms of a lyrical highlight. And the lyrics read, "I toss my coin to say, in love with me, you'd stay." So it's not the lyric writing isn't the best, but you can just envision a character tossing a coin into a fountain and being I really want this person to stay in love with me. So that was pretty impactful. I did enjoy that. But yeah, outside of that, this is one of the tracks that I'm putting in the great song bucket. Just didn't do enough to kick out my third favorite track off the whole record out of the top spot. But still, it's a great track nonetheless.
It really is. And again, I would not have, judged you if you had put this in your top three, because it's just a really strong song. And you're right, it is more of a broken-hearted song than it is a love song. And there are lyrical good moments in there, but it just didn't quite. Again, it's got so much, and any very platitudinal love song that would probably be deeper than a lot of other 70s love songs, Golden Lady, or even All in Love is Fair, is that it's got the competition of Higher Ground, Living for the City, Too High. So it comes off much more platitudinal, but still very, very deep. And again, the music is so, so good. Speaking of which, because as I've spoiled, these last two tracks are my top three. So we got some good music coming up here. Ryan, the penultimate track, I will let you lead off, and that is Don't You Worry About a Thing.
Nah, I never do, man. Anyways, with Don't You Worry About a Thing. I very, very much appreciate what this song is bringing to the table. The intro is a ton fun, and like you get the spoken word bits, like that was a very nice touch, and also like the overall like bossa nova like groove that we have going on here in the track, like oh my goodness, like we're 8 tracks into this thing, and like we've gotten a lot of different musical styles from Stevie as a whole, and like here like this was a different kind of groove, and I very much appreciated how it was executed, and it comes like to like fruition with the how the chorus hits. It's so pleasant on the ears to hit like here. And Stevie plays it off pretty well, like on a performance standpoint. So top notch to him, and like again, his sense of melody is forefront within that chorus. Well, the call and response dynamics in the outro I found to be pretty cool. And also like specifically with the answer part of the call response dynamic there being that part being in Spanish. I thought that was like kind of clever and pretty unique. So shout out to Stevie there for coming up with a clever like twist on the lyrics there, and the vocalizations at the end of the track came across pretty well. Very solid, very very pleasant to the ears. I didn't really have a lyrical highlight here, but dude, this song is legit. Like pretty much like throughout the whole experience of it. And the only other thing I gotta say about Don't You Worry About a Thing is, ladies and gentlemen, we've completed the trilogy with my top 3, and Don't You Worry About a Thing being my 3rd favorite track off the whole record.
So, I really don't have too much more to add to what you already said, but I will add a little bit. First of all, you're absolutely right about that intro. Not only does it sound great musically because you have that wonderful piano that Stevie's laying down, and then you get the Latin percussion with the maracas and the bongos, and then you get that interlude where you have Stevie trying to translate Spanish for somebody. And this song is just very percussive, very heavy, and it just pounds out a rhythm that is very irresistible. Not just the percussion, but like Stevie's piano playing itself is very percussive. So it's just really, really good. And lyrically speaking, to me, my interpretation of this track is that it's very much dealing with the same subject matter as Too High and talking about the dangers of drugs. But the jazziness of that track is being flipped to a more sensuous, Latin, devious counterpart, in which it almost feels like this song is that same scenario of being too high on drugs, but from the dealer's perspective. Because, everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it. That could be very well talking about, drug addiction. But Stevie being the protagonist here, or the antagonist, if you will, is saying, hey, don't you worry about a thing, because, you'll be able to be on my side and check all this cool stuff out. So, yeah, it's an interesting twist on the subject matter of Too High. And it just, again, sounds incredible. Like, this was the last of the 3 singles that reached the top 20. I think it peaked out at number 16. And for good reason. Like, it's just a mover and a shaker of a song, front to back, up top to bottom. The piano sounds great. The percussion sounds great. The one-man chorus, the call and response that you mentioned, sounds great. So, yeah, obviously I spoiled that this is my top 3. Where does it land? Much like Ryan, it lands at number 3 for me, too.
All right, man. So, yeah, we did it, man. And we didn't do it quite yet. The way that we indeed do it is we finish off this review by talking about the closing track off the record, in that being He's Misstra Know-It-All.
He's Misstra Know-It-All, the final track. Now, why is this my second favorite track on the album? Because for those of you who can do math and have filled out your scorecards, you could understand why this space is blank. But aesthetically speaking, I just really, really, really like this song. First of all, I'm just a sucker for those sunny piano chords that this track is going with. It almost sounds like sunrise on a Sunday morning or sunrise on a Saturday morning, where you're just waking up and you can smell coffee and you're walking around your bathrobe and it's like 70 degrees. You just take that nice breath of this is the good life, and that's just how his piano sounds. That's how the synth sound. That's how everything sounds. And also credit to Willie Weeks on bass, one of the few instrumentalists who is not Stevie Wonder on this album. He does a really good job on the bass and laying down that very funky, light groove that Stevie masters. And then you get into the lyrics where, much like Jesus, Children of America, and more so Higher Ground, Stevie is executing smoothly, but the lyrics are very, very cut and bitter. Apparently, this song was meant to be about Richard Nixon, who was president at the time, and much like these current times, not a very popular president because of his con style and his very sort of devious manner. But realistically, this song could be about any type of hustler, con man, contrarian, know-it-all type of guy who, is able to, hustle you out of a few bucks and, give you a little while he gains a lot. So that's basically what the song's about. And once again, the two-man band and the one-man choir are just absolutely bringing it. The way that Stevie harmonizes with himself when they say, he's Misstra, know-it-all, just sounds so smooth and so wonderful. And the last 2.5 minutes of this song, man, once again, he introduces the hand claps like he did on Living for the City. It just sounds like a party. Like, it just sounds like a revivalist party that you just want to be standing in the middle of, blissed out on just good vibes. And not only that, I've talked about Stevie just drumming on this album a little bit, but this is one of his better performances ever. Like, especially towards the end. Like, he's just washing cymbals all over the place. And he's just sort of like really going nuts on the drum set, but he's never losing the groove, which is impressive and underrated as all can be. I suspect he might have double tracked it. Like, he may have done 2 drum performances at the same time. But guess what? I don't care. It sounds amazing. And also, this track is kind of funny because it may hold the world record for longest fade out ever. Like, it lasts like a minute or a minute and change, where it just doesn't stop. But you don't want the song to stop. Like, it just grooves so hard. And it's so tight and it's so wonderful. It's so beautiful. Like, this is one of those songs, like, on repeated listens, I just keep growing to love more and more and more. So, yeah. Fill out your scorecards. It is my second favorite track on the album. He's Mr. Know-It-All, a wonderful closer to Innervisions.
I agree with that, man. I mean, even though, like, I'm obviously lower on the track than you because I ran out of, like, top tracks. And I wouldn't even consider this to be, like, at least from my appreciation, like, I wouldn't consider it to be, like, a cut track or, like, a great song bucket. It's definitely the good song bucket for me, though. Like, there's not a bad track in this whole, like, record, and I can't even really identify, like, if I had to rank, like, the good song bucket tracks, what would be my least favorite, because they're all, like, within the same kind of equal, like, weighting. But, yeah, like, this song has a very smooth groove here that is occurring. Like, you illustrated in your dissection about the track, and just within that groove, like, you talk about Stevie's, like, drumming and how, like, it's very effective. I felt like that was pretty impactful, and his piano playing here is also pretty solid. And yeah, I'm not going to really go into so much of what you already talked about. One thing that I did note, though, in the track that you didn't dive into is, like, what I described as scatting. And the track in the middle was actually pretty. It was an excellent touch, and I very much enjoyed that. And the backing vocals in the track come across pretty well. And like you, I did appreciate how he was harmonizing within himself. So very excellent touch. And also the world's longest, like, fade out that you talked about. Like, it comes across pretty well. Like, Stevie's just jamming and the band's just vibing out. And, like, diving into, like, the lyrics, though. Like, I'm gonna bring back a little bit of a trope that we've had in our show before. I found this song to be Stevie Wonder's Idiot Wind, in terms of, like, him writing biting lyrics about, like, how, like, this one person is just a piece of garbage. So, yeah, there's that. But I will say, like, on the other hand, the song is pretty simple in its lyrics, so I didn't really find a lyrical highlight that really stood out to me. But still, it's a fun track on that aspect. And I did catch the Richard Nixon, backing, like, the backstory about this track. So I agree with you as well. Like, well, I don't want to say I agree with you, but that was something I had in my notes as well. But yeah, overall though, with he's Misstra Know-It-All, like, I think I was just much more gravitated towards, like, Don't You Worry About a Thing, with the overall groove of it. And then Higher Ground, like, that was pretty much going to be a lock for my top spot. One of my top spots in the album because of my prior experience with it. And also, like, another track really just blew me away, made me want to run through a wall, which he's Mr. Know-It-All. Even though it's a good song, it didn't make me want to run through a wall.
And that's fair. I again, I am not shaming or shying away from any biases that we've talked about on the show. Again, for those of you who want a good example of biases being, well described and reasoning for liking a song, go check out our Blink-182 episode. There is a nice little discussion about a song based on those merits. But for me, I will agree with you a little bit that the lyrics are sort of platitudinal. They aren't super deep, but I think they're a little deep enough, and they do have that sarcastic bite. Like you mentioned, it's very Idiot Wind territory. But to me, the music is just so amazing on this track, especially, again, instrumentally, the way it just has those sunny vibes and the intense percussion on the back end. It just works so well.
I totally appreciate that. But speaking about working so well, I can't help notice, and the dear listener out there probably has noticed as well, we've had 9 tracks up. 9 tracks have been smacked down. Scorecards have been filled out. So there's only one thing left to say about this review.
We did it, man.
Indeed, we accomplished the journey. And the journey that we had is we had some Innervisions with Stevie Wonder, and he told us all about what it meant to be living for the city. I'm going to go first in terms of my overall, thoughts and rating about the album as a whole. So, I walk away from this review thinking about Innervisions. It's funny that, I don't know if you feel... I don't feel like you feel the same way about this album as other people do, where they consider this album to be an absolute masterclass of, Stevie Wonder as a whole. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're gonna have your opinion, obviously. But for me, I found this to be a very good starter Stevie Wonder album, in that you get a lot of the good songs in this record here. They are good, solid songs. There's not a bad performance to be had throughout. Nothing really I can nitpick so much of hey, this is a subpar track compared to the rest. It's just different levels of appreciation. And then you get behemoths of songs Living for the City that stand way at the top of the pecking order of this track listing here. And then also you get different other tracks Don't You Worry About a Thing and Higher Ground, and even other tracks He's Mr. Know-It-All, and just other tracks off the record as a whole where you can really appreciate what's being brought to the table. And there's different flavors that Stevie's bringing to the table, so he's not sticking within one specific style. So yeah, overall though, my rating here is going to reflect an album that, if someone's looking for a Stevie Wonder album that to start out with, I'm going to recommend this one throughout. I also will probably revisit this album, like, multiple times. And I would even consider picking it up on vinyl. Like, it's not going to be my first choice when I go into a record store, but if I come across it, I might pick it up and put it, like, within contention of, like, like a selection of, like, 5 tracks that I have, well, not 5 tracks, 5 records that I have currently within my hands. But, yeah, in terms of Innervisions by Stevie Wonder, I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
And for me, this album is, to me, just, I mean, you like you said, you get the titans like Don't You Worry About a Thing, and especially Living for the City, that just absolutely wreck shop every single time. And not only that, but it touches on such deep and dark subject matter that not just for Motown or post Motown, I guess you would say, or R&B in general, but for pop overall and just the American conscience, like, this is just an absolute masterpiece. And I had the thought, and I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about All in Love is Fair, that the songs that are on the lower rung of this album, like that one, and I'll throw Visions in there a little bit too. Like, there's still stuff in there that is just amazing. Like, particularly Stevie's vocal performances, the choices of the riffs that are deployed. Like, musically, there is not a single bad note on this entire album. Not one. And lyrically, again, aside from the opening line of Jesus Children of America, every single line is executed either solidly or, in the case of Living for the City, immaculately. And it was once I realized that the album cuts were so much better than your typical album filler, like, it kind of forces you to pay attention. It's when I realized this truly is one of the greatest albums of all time. So for me, it is a no doubter of an album recommendation. Like, I'm glad to own it on vinyl, and I'm glad to have talked about this, because for me, it is a easy 10 out of 10.
Oh man, I misspoke in my analysis about my ratings. But yeah, we have a 10, everybody. Oh man, so your 10 and my 8 average out to be a solid 9 out of 10, because
math
works for everyone. It's just numbers. Don't take it personal. So for me, when it comes to my next album recommendation here within in this review here, I'm gonna recommend an album that I've recommended probably every single time that we talk about, like, a funky kind of, like, music album as a whole. And I'm curious to see if you can kind of guess this as a whole. But I'm gonna recommend "Awaken My Love" by Childish Gambino. So yeah, I know I've recommended "Awaken My Love" by Childish Gambino like a handful of times, and it almost seems like a default, like, knee-jerk reaction whenever we come across this kind of music. But it's a great album nonetheless, man. I ain't gonna deny it. So that's gonna be my next album recommendation.
That's another album that I really need to just get off the schneid and really take a deep listen to, because I have yet to do that, and I know you recommended it several times, so I will make it a point over the next, like, few days to actually, like, dive into "Awaken My Love" by Childish Gambino. For me, though, piggybacking off a comment that you thought I was going to make, you thought that I considered Innervisions to be a starter album for Stevie Wonder. I don't think that's true at all. But I can kind of understand where you're going from, because this is the starter of his, just, again, dominant run through the 70s of being probably the best music artist on earth. And I think the culmination of that, the other massive, titanic, no-doubter album, and that's the one I'm going to recommend next, is from 1976. It is by Stevie Wonder, and it's Songs in the Key of Life. Just an absolute tour de force of great R&B, great pop, great everything front to back. It's probably about twice as long as this one, I will warn you guys, so it's not necessarily something you can just snack on and leave for later. Like, no, it's a beefer, but it is a beefer of titanic proportions, and it's worth every single note. So yeah, Songs in the Key of Life, easy recommendation based off Innervisions.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and anybody who identifies it as anything in between those two spectrums there, to summarize our review, our average rating for Innervisions by Stevie Wonder is a solid 9 out of 10. I recommend it as a next album recommendation, Awaken My Love by Childish Gambino, and Matthew recommends Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder himself. Dear listener out there, we recommend, you check out obviously we recommend that you check out Innervisions because we just got done talking about that album. But if you did enjoy that, listen to both of those albums. Make a Sunday out of it, man. Put it on while you're doing your spring cleaning here in the future here. But yeah, man. We did it, man. We've accomplished the Stevie Wonder review, man. I'm very proud of us.
I am too, and I'm glad we talked about this because again, it's always been one of my favorite albums, and it's again, I would say it's in the level of essential listening for anyone who not only wants to get into 70s music, but just music in general. Like, this is like if Stevie's early stuff, like in his like Motown singles period, was like, the shallow end of the pool. Like, this is your first dive into the deep end. Like, this is 12 feet, and you better be ready to learn how to swim.
Yeah, man, and like I said in my overall thoughts about the album, it's very, very much a great beginning album for Stevie Wonder for me, and I'm curious within repeated listens if my overall rating and appreciation will become a little bit more closer to yours. Time will tell, man.
It will, but time will tell us now that this episode is going to be kicked into bed, and that means for our next installment in our Black History Month series for 2026, Ryan, you are the one to select where we're heading next.
So, yeah, I was thinking about it today, and my last two reviews that I put up for contention were Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny. Very much popular music, Billboard darlings and critical pop music. So I think for the month of February within the Black History Month spectrum, I'm gonna steer away from that. I'm gonna go more into the Ryan Kearns musical camp here. So we have the potential to get a little weird. We're gonna get a little weird regardless. But we also are gonna mix in some classical, straightforward indie rock elements. So the way that I'm gonna have you choose between these ventures here is we're gonna cover both styles within Black History Month in my wheelhouse here. But the first style that we're gonna cover, I'm gonna have you choose between these two actresses that were very prominent in the 90s, but also had careers outside of the 90s as well. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. The first actress is Winona Ryder.
Okay.
The next one is Juliette Lewis.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting one. I'm going to go with Winona Ryder.
All right, cool. Now, the next selection in terms of what specific artist that we're going to be covering is I'm going to have you pick between a city. Baltimore or Philly?
Oh. Well, I kind of already have my Philly idea in my head, so I'm going to pivot to Baltimore.
All right. So for the first, installment of Black History Month in the year of our Lord 2026, we're going to be going into the more straightforward realm of music offerings that I could bring to the table here. And the artist that we're going to be covering next week is Bartees Strange. And the specific album that we're going to be covering within his catalog is his album that was released in 2020 called Live Forever. It's his debut album. Well, Yeah, it's his debut album, man. So I hope you're ready, man.
Well, I have no idea who this guy is, so let's party.
Oh man, I can't wait, man. And like, you know, we're just gonna keep this gravy train rolling into next week. We're gonna keep on trying until we reach our highest ground.